Welcome into a brand new edition of the 06010 ESPN Communications Podcast. I'm the host, Alex Feuz, and we are joined with Mary Wise, ESPN Volleyball Analyst. She'll be on the call for the national semifinals this Thursday, followed by the championship match on Sunday, all on ESPN for the volleyball action this week. Mary, thanks so much for your time today. It's a very busy week for you. So what can fans expect most on Thursday and then on Sunday as well?
Uh, who would have thought prior to Sunday that we would be talking about four teams and none of the teams included Nebraska? So there was so much, we believe that there's parity in women's volleyball. But when the seeds hold true, that was the pushback. And then I would push back. No, you see the parity in conference play. You see parity in that when you get to that 2 versus 3. But once you get to playing the number one seed on their home court, there's such an advantage. They earn that right. There's such an advantage. And I think the pushback was always going to be until one of those number one seeds doesn't advance, is there truly parity? Well, can we put that to rest? There is parity in collegiate women's volleyball.
What surprised you most from this past season heading into this weekend?
I don't know if it's so much of a surprise as much as just so excited and thrilled with the state of women's volleyball. We had talked about, because of the large volume of players playing in high school and in club, there's just better players to go around. That was not true when I first got into it. There just wasn't enough great players. So you could find them all in Southern California. They were going to, at that time, that Pac-10 schools. But now there's just across the country players, like really highly talented players in the 64 teams, maybe in the teams that were upset and didn't get the tournament. So I think that is, I don't know if it's a surprise as much as it's just awesome to witness.
You mentioned the growth aspect of it. What was a turning point in your eyes, do you think, when the incredible growth that you mentioned of women's volleyball shifted, in your opinion?
I think we saw it coming. And for those of us that have been in the game for a long time, we knew that, women's basketball got really separated themselves in the early 90s with the resources that were put on campuses into women's basketball. So they separated from the gap because there was more money put in women's basketball. And then the WNBA. So we were chasing women's basketball for a while. And then slowly by slowly, some of the same players that would have chosen to play basketball in high school chose volleyball. And so that's how our game got better. That's how we had more great players. But truly, it was television. It was television arrived at the right time. And that once, the SEC network, then the Big Ten network, and what's followed is that you have more televised matches of these really athletic, talented, fun to watch players playing. Here's my bias coming through, playing this game. And there are more people watching it. And I think that it's a direct reflection. We can all thank television.
Why do you love women's volleyball so much?
It was not my first love. I came to it late, but I just enjoy the inherent challenges of having 6 players that have to interact. They're so dependent on one another to be successful, in that the 3 contacts. There isn't, no player is allowed to pass, set, and hit to themselves, or by themselves. So it's interdependent in a small area. It is, to me, it's the perfect sport for females. We're a gender that we like to hang out together. There's a reason. I always used to say, there's a reason why we don't go to the restroom by ourselves. I mean, we like to hang out together, and volleyball allows us to do that.
Mary, you spent more than 3 decades on the sideline coaching. what has this new chapter in the broadcast booth meant for you, and what have you thought in this first year?
First, I have to start with gratitude. I'm so thankful to the folks at ESPN that provided me this opportunity, because I did step away from coaching, but I'm still in volleyball. And now, without the stresses, I sleep a little bit better, or I should sleep a little bit better after matches, but I'm still reliving the matches, but without the angst. I now get to be a total fan of the sport, not just our program or our league. I can fangirl with everyone else, and I have had a blast. The other piece, and what I didn't realize, Alex, is I knew as a coach how knowledgeable and invested those calling the volleyball matches were, because as coaches, you get interviewed and they're asking these really good questions. But I didn't know that your producers and directors and graphics folks and all these people that behind the scenes, that are behind the camera, how much they love volleyball. So I get to work with folks that are at the top of their game. They are so freaking talented, and they are passionate about volleyball. This is like living a dream for me, to be around these people.
As an analyst, what do you think you're able to see or explain that only a longtime head coach might be able to?
I think when I was so fortunate, I was paired multiple matches with Sam Gore, and Sam used to do Florida matches, so he's known me for a while. But when he tees it up and he says, what would your message be here to your team? You're down 0-2, or you're up 2-0, or you're going into this fifth set, or you just came off of a really tough loss. And I think that having been there, have experienced to be on the bench and have an idea of all the moving pieces that you have to do. And I have enjoyed watching the assistant coaches move to the head coaching role, knowing that just one seat over changes everything, and watching what that happens. And all of the analogy I still use in coaching is that you are spinning plates, like the old carnival act where the guy had the stick. Well, I think it was always a guy, but he had the stick and he would put a plate on top and he'd spin it, and he had a whole line of sticks and the plate spinning, and he'd get down to the end and the first one is wobbling. You have to run down there and spin that one and check them out. That is coaching. You are constantly spinning plates. And I think that's the piece that I can provide. What's it like before a match, after match, and during a match while you're spinning plates?
You said everything changes when you slide one seat over, becoming an assistant coach to a head coach. What does that process look like when you are assistant coaching and then you transition to a head coach?
Well, besides the fact that it all falls back to the head coach, all those decisions, it's real easy as an assistant to say, we got to take her out, put her in, like these quick decisions that as a head coach, you have to think about the ramifications long-term, not just short-term. What happens when you pull that player and her response, knowing that you've got a match, you're playing 48 hours later, and can you go back and spin her plate and all? So I think sometimes as assistant, and I loved it when assistant coaches, as a matter of fact, I would, it was one of my expectations. I want you to make suggestions. I may not always listen to them, but you can't remain silent. We get into that before, it's a timeout before we meet with the team. I want to hear from you. And I may, you take your info, I may not, but when you know that it all eventually, every decision falls to your responsibility, and you live with the responsibility of those, 18 to 22-year-olds. When assistant coaches, be it our former assistants or colleagues that I know, when they get that head job, I tell them, congratulations, and you just had your last good night's sleep.
Mary, when you're in the broadcast booth and this is the first year of doing that, what's your thought process when you see a coach make a decision that you might have not done if you were the head coach?
I try to keep in mind that I'm not in their practice. That is one of the things that you always have to understand, is that it's so easy now that I'm a fan as well to be able to go, I don't know if I'd make that decision, but you are not in their gym. You are not in the locker room. And I guarantee you there are so many factors that go into the decisions that coaches make that we don't even know. And I hope that I have empathy for those coaches. It's not an easy job. Not during the matches, not after the match. She who didn't play and you pass by their parents and they're not very happy with you, or when that phone rings at midnight, or when the portal opens. It is a very demanding, but oh so rewarding of a profession.
Mary, you had a legendary career at Florida. When you look back at your time there, what do you feel like best captures what the success that you built there?
I'd like to think that it was, there was this piece, and I get it. We are judged by what happens the last 3 weeks of the year. And the fact that we got—
Is that frustrating for you that people only look at the last 3 weeks?
No, it's just the reality.
Right.
But I don't know if I can say it enough that we shouldn't judge solely on the last 3 weeks. That what Nebraska did to go undefeated through the season, to only drop one set in conference play, they had a phenomenal season. And I don't think they should be solely judged because they didn't advance to the final weekend. Not a chance. It was one of the funnest teams to watch. They just hit— it happens in sports— a night when Texas A&M played so well. So to your point, it is the reality, but it is not how I, because I'm old. I don't know if you had asked me this, Alex, when I was in my early 30s, I'm not sure I had the wisdom or the maturity to understand that coaches cannot judge themselves based solely on the one-loss record. And we can't do that to the player. We would never do that to the players. You cannot judge players based on solely their production. Then we can't hold ourselves to the same thing.
You have over 1,000 wins and, again, the decades of sustained success. What do you think the key to that consistency was year over year?
Well, we had the support of the athletic department and the sustained success. And thank you for bringing that up, because going back to, besides the last week and not winning the very last night, we were, at least we were in it. We were in the mix. And that's what I want, is that we never had— there was some years, no, we didn't advance to the regional final, but a lot of years we did. And that my goal was, can we just have sustained success? And then you never know, on a given night, and when those stars line up, you have that big time left side hitter and you're healthy and it's a good matchup, that you could play that very last match of the year.
Mary, the last question before we get to the Fast Five round. Your husband, Mark Wise, has been an ESPN basketball analyst for a decade now at ESPN. Do you ever compare notes on the prep and the travel and when it goes into broadcasting games?
You have no idea how much I have leaned on Mark. I've always leaned on him with his background, but especially now. And the joke, and he gets a kick out of when I tell our friends, I used to come home from practice. We'd check in with each other. And when I would ask, how was your day? And he'd say, busy. My response would be like, really? Your day was busy? And now I get it, because you don't have a director of operations. You don't have a travel agent, assistant coach, an SID. You don't have all those people. I would just text those people when I needed info and stuff. I got to do that all on my own. And there's no way I would have known that without Mark's help and navigating the ESPN and the Disney website and also, but watching his prep and watching, I would tell our friends, the very first basketball game that comes on TV in November, our television is going to watch nothing but basketball until the end of the NCAA. And then, of course, we have to watch the NBA. But I get it now. I watched more women's volleyball on TV in the first month than I ever in my entire career. I had the time, but two, I get it. You get to watch those games because you may have that team and you see how that team matches out. So I could not thank Mark enough for his guidance. I learned so much, and I didn't even know I was paying attention because I was in my coaching world. Right. But and I don't think I never knew how much prep work goes in for those folks when they're doing a game or a match.
Does he watch whenever you're on? Does he text you during the games? How does that work?
He does not text me during the games, but we will converse before and afterwards, and talking about. I'll run some ideas by him, and listening to him and his creativeness of things that they can the producer, can they recreate, gets my juices flowing. So this first year, that first match, Alex, I'm sitting alongside Emily Amon and Eric Fried. This is the match at Vandy. These guys are the top of their game. And I remember there was a missed serve, and my response was like, yeah, I got nothing. I mean, it was a bad misserve. And I was like, as a coach, I was like, yeah, next play I can. And Emily starts just rattling off all this information. And I was like, oh, I have so much to learn. She's so good. She has now that's why I call her Emily McNugget, because the girl has more information in her. And I had to get out of my coaching break. It was a terrible misserve. I didn't want to talk about it. I could go. She didn't talk about it either. She just had other things she was ready to say. So I have learned, they do prep for so much material, and you may not even get to it. And learning how to do that too.
Well, Mary, this is my favorite part of any interview I do. It's the Feuz Fast Five. It's 5 quick questions. Are you ready?
Ready.
A skill or detail fans might often look, but wins matches.
A skill that fans may not see, but often wins matches, will be the substitution patterns by head coaches.
Love it. If you weren't coaching volleyball, what sport do you think you would have coached?
In my family, with a son who's a Division I head women's basketball coach at Sanford, and Mark doing men's basketball, it would probably be basketball.
Did you play growing up? Were you involved in basketball?
I was. I played basketball. Basketball was available back in my era earlier than volleyball. So that was my first love. But then came to volleyball late and never left.
That's amazing. If you could host a podcast with anyone in your phone contacts, who would you choose and why?
I think it'd be Hugh McCutcheon, our former Olympic coach for both the men and the women. He is just a savant of the game. And I would just be asking him all the questions if we could do a podcast together.
That's amazing. You'll be in Kansas City this weekend. When you think about Kansas City, what memories come to mind?
The first one is like the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, which is exactly what happens in the NCAA tournament. The highest of high in Kansas City, 2017 semifinal. In 5 sets, we beat Stanford to advance to the national championship. The lowest of lows was losing to Nebraska in that championship, but great memories of Kansas City.
And Mary, the last one for you. When you look back at the impact on the sport of volleyball, if someone asks you, how would you define that impact on the sport? What would you tell them?
I was asked a similar question to this, and I talked about being in the room when we went to Rally Score and being chair of the TV committee when we had our first national game of the week. And I'm so happy I was at the right place at the right time. But it was Mick Haley, the longtime, very successful collegiate coach, national team coach, who asked the question. And he said that the greatest impact perhaps was opening the door for women of color at Florida to play volleyball, and how that helped change our sport. And when he said it, it almost took my breath away, because that really, nothing meant more to me than that.
That's amazing. And Mary, thank you so much for your time today. I know this is a busy week for you. Safe travels to Kansas City. I know I'll be watching Thursday and Sunday for the semifinals and then the championship match. Have a great call and stay warm out there in Kansas City.
Thank you, Alex.